Her coverage starts right now.
I'm Katie Barlow. Coming up on this special edition of In the Courts, the indictment of Donald Trump. How does a former president even get arrested? What does this mean for 2024? And why these charges may not be a slam dunk for prosecutors. We've got answers from experts, including a former special agent on the presidential detail. And it all starts right now. Hey everyone, good Friday, and thanks for joining us. We have a packed show covering this historic moment in America. Let's break down what's happened in the last 24 hours. A New York grand jury voted to indict former President Donald Trump on Thursday. He is the first former United States president ever to face a criminal indictment, and this is a first look at the historic paperwork confirming that it happened. And we're just getting word from sources with the Associated Press that at least one of those charges is a felony. Sources familiar with the case say that Trump could be facing more than 24 counts related to business fraud. Trump was investigated for allegedly falsifying business documents related to a 2016 hush money payment allegedly made on his behalf to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, the indictment is under seal for now, so we have not seen the official charges. But a spokesperson for the New York courts confirmed to Fox 5 today that Trump will be arraigned in New York Tuesday around 2:15 in the afternoon. Now, Trump maintains his innocence in this case, calling it political persecution. And he took to Truth Social to say this: "The judge assigned to my witch hunt case, a case that has never been charged before, hates me. His name is Juan Manuel Marchand and was handpicked by Bragg and the prosecutors and is the same person who railroaded my 75-year-old former CFO, Alan Weisselberg," and goes on to say that he is viciously appealing. He's got to file a motion to dismiss first before we get to the appeal stage. But nonetheless, the Biden administration is not saying anything about the indictment at this point, but others are. Congressional Republicans and former Trump administration officials are speaking out, and here's what former Vice President Mike Pence had to say.
I think the unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States for a campaign finance issue is an outrage. And I think it's clear to the overwhelming majority of the American people that this is nothing short of a political prosecution being affected by a Manhattan DA who literally campaigned on bringing charges against one particular American.
And Pence isn't the only potential 2024 rival speaking out. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis tweeted this: "The weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head," he says. "It is un-American, and Florida will not assist in an extradition request given the questionable circumstances at issue with this Soros-backed Manhattan prosecutor and his political agenda." Now, Trump is not expected to resist arrest, but DeSantis would quickly run into some constitutional problems if he actually followed through on that promise. If you want some light bedtime reading on this Friday night, check out Article 4, Section 2, Clause 2. We also caught up with Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin today, speaking out. He said the left is weaponizing the political system. Take a listen.
Well, I don't know anything about hush money payments to prostitutes. It's not something that I know anything about. But what I do know is that when there has been an issue that has been dealt with, and then it continues to be dealt with again and again and again, I think it erodes people's faith in the judicial system.
And we'll talk more about the politics of this Trump indictment with Mika Solner from Punchbowl News, a friend of Fox 5. She'll be on to join us live later in the show. But before we go any further, a favorite way to tell the news on this show: WTF is an indictment? Well, an indictment is a formal charge of a crime. In this case, a grand jury would examine the evidence, testimony, and documents that are against Trump. The prosecutor gets pretty much full control of what evidence is presented in the grand jury room. And in New York, as many as 23 people can serve on a grand jury. It takes just 12 of them to agree that there's probable cause to believe a crime was committed. Now, that is a much lower standard than a trial jury that must decide whether a crime was committed beyond a reasonable doubt. There's been a flurry of activity in front of the Manhattan courthouse since word of the indictment came down. Let's go live to New York now, and Sharon Crowley with our sister station Fox 5 New York. Sharon, what are things like up there tonight?
Well, as you can imagine, it's pretty much a circus. More than anything, there are journalists from around the world outside the courthouse here in Lower Manhattan. And, of course, that is because we are expecting former President Donald Trump to be arraigned here Tuesday afternoon. That, according to his lawyer. His lawyer also saying that the former president will try to fight this. Apparently, the former president, Donald Trump, was very stunned to hear the grand jury had indicted him. Now, when he's brought here to the criminal courthouse, he will be treated, well, not exactly like any other criminal defendant, but we are expecting him to be fingerprinted. The difference, of course, being from him and almost anybody else, everybody else, is Secret Service will be with him when he goes through that process. The indictment is sealed, as you mentioned, but we are expecting to hear in open court the details of that when it is open, and that is when Trump and his team will be hearing what he's charged with as well. Of course, we do know that the indictment centers around hush money payments paid to Stormy Daniels and former Playboy model Karen McDougal. And his former fixer has already pled guilty to paying them and said that he did so on behalf of the former President Donald Trump has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Now, one of his lawyers, attorney Joe Tacopina, we spoke with him earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the case.
After getting over the shock of this actually coming to fruition, because we all are hoping that justice would prevail, the rule of law would mean something. Then he buckled his belt and he, sturdied himself, and he is just a tough guy, and he's someone whose knees do not buckle, and he's ready to fight now.
I think that if they brought that case alone, it would get laughed out of court. It would be. I think you're going to see more counts of falsifying business records. I think you're going to see a thicker indictment. I think you're going to see more allegations that relate to a course of conduct over time relating to the same type of scheme, which is, making entries and doing things that were illegal.
Well, the NYPD is on alert. In fact, more than 30,000 police officers called into work today in case they had off or were on vacation. They want to be fully staffed ahead of any protests. The security is tight here at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan and also pretty tight around Trump Tower because they don't know what to expect in the coming days. For now, I'm reporting live from outside the courthouse. I'm Sharon Crowley. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Sharon, thank you so much for that live report. All right, let's dive into the legal ramifications of all of this. Joining me now to discuss is legal and political analyst Dr. Tracy Pearson. Tracy, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's always great to be here on Fox 5.
We've already heard folks talking about this crime of falsifying business records. So in New York, it's at least a misdemeanor to knowingly cause a subordinate to falsify a business record. We just learned from the AP at least one of those is a felony, one of those charges in the indictment. Now, to be a felony in New York for falsifying business records, you have to knowingly do it in order to conceal or commit another crime. And all of this requires something called the intent to defraud. And that's something that's pretty difficult to prove in court. Why is that?
Well, it can be difficult. It really depends in these cases on the evidence that they have. You have to prove intent. So you have to prove what was in someone's mind. And one of the ways that you can do that is showing absence of mistake, absence of error, basically. And so if you see it multiple times, if you see this action multiple times, if you have a witness that can testify to a plan to do something, then that makes it easier to overcome that evidentiary burden. But what we're thinking about here is that there certainly is a felony. There's probably 30 some odd felonies because indictments are felonies. Informations are misdemeanors. And what we know at this point is that he's been indicted.
So looking ahead to what's next once Trump appears for his arraignment, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to have a criminal defendant who is this outspoken? We know that he's made posts on Truth Social with him standing next to DA Bragg holding a baseball bat, promising death and destruction. Can you talk a little bit about maybe a judge's inclination here, what a gag order is, and how that may be imposed on Trump in something like this?
Absolutely. Since this started, since we knew that there may be indictments coming down, we've seen posts by Donald Trump. And frankly, I've been concerned. If I had been his lawyer, I would have tackled him to the floor. The types of things that have been posted are things that the court can consider. An arraignment is really a simple, basic proceeding where they identify that you are the person that is identified in the arraignment, that you are in fact Donald Trump, and you are the person they've identified in the indictment, excuse me. And then what they do is they enter a plea of not guilty, usually, and they talk about bail. It's a really basic process. Now, in New York, there's some bail conditions that can be imposed, like a gag order. They have to be very narrowly tailored because we want to avoid issues of unconstitutionality with speech. But they have to protect the integrity of the process. And when you're asserting statements that are potentially a cause for a security concern, the judge can take that into consideration. Now, he shouldn't be holding him on remand, what they call remand, but it is very possible that if there is a danger that he may not appear for his next hearing, or if there is a safety issue in the community. And we also know there's been some reporting about an issue where there was a package delivered with white powder. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump did that, but if Donald Trump keeps talking and he keeps ginning up his base, there may be a problem for him when it comes to him being out on bail.
Dr. Tracy Pearson, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights with us and joining us for this special episode tonight.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us tonight. We're just getting started here on this special edition of In the Court. Still to come, just what will security look like when a former president is booked and processed? And we look at the political fallout from the indictment as well. Don't go away. Welcome back. What we're seeing with this indictment is history in the making. We've never had a former president charged criminally. Now, there's plenty of security and barricades that are up outside the courthouse in Manhattan right now. That's in case there are protests for or against Trump. So just how will things proceed going forward, and what kind of security with the former president will he have when he is booked and processed? Earlier, I spoke with Chuck Marino, a security expert and a former special agent who served on a presidential detail. Here's that conversation.
So the Secret Service is all about advance work, prep work. They have a good relationship with the NYPD, likely something they're leaning on right now. But this is all about the protectee, and they build protection around who is being protected. And this is someone who is sometimes unpredictable and may enjoy the spotlight during an event like this. How complicated does that make things?
Well, it makes it very complicated. One, it's an unprecedented situation, but what's not unprecedented here is the role and responsibility of the Secret Service. They do it each and every day with the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. So here in this situation, they're going to be focused on three key areas. That is protective intelligence, due to the unprecedented nature and the increase in media coverage that may bring out specific incredible threats or protests. They'll be focused on the security of the site itself, which will be the courthouse. And then they will be focused on the protection detail, which is going where the president goes.
And talking about where this could end up eventually, because this is a criminal case, but we haven't seen the indictment yet. There's still a lot to unfold. But if we were to get to a conviction here and a possible holding of President Trump's some sort of custody situation, how would that work with someone who's under Secret Service protection?
Well, the Secret Service would work closely, as they have been right now, with the court officers, the NYPD, and the Department of Corrections, to make sure that the accommodations, if any, suited the needs of the Secret Service to continue to protect the former president.
Also, part of the Secret Service's job is to coordinate with staff. And here, former President Trump has a number of staffers who have different interests. He's got legal staff who are interested in protecting him legally and making sure that they're representing him well in court. But he's got campaign staff who are gearing up for 2024. And then he has personal staff who manages him from day to day. How does the Secret Service work with all of those competing interests in navigating a situation like this?
Well, on a daily basis, of course, it's important for the Secret Service detail that's assigned to the former president to have a good working relationship with the staff. That's where they get their itineraries from, including travel plans. However, it's very important that not only the former president's staff in this situation, but also the district attorney's office. Remember, the Secret Service is an apolitical organization, which means they are not going to get involved in the nuanced details that are occurring between the district attorney's office and the former president's legal team. They are solely concerned with the safety and security of the former president, his wife, and their plans, whatever they may be, to travel. The Secret Service will make that happen.
And we're hearing some reports that the Secret Service may have been involved in delaying a potential arraignment of President Trump. We heard that he was initially asked to come in on Friday and that got delayed. Now we're hearing that it's going to be Tuesday. Have you heard anything on that?
I have, and I've spoken to multiple high-level sources within the agency who absolutely deny and say they did not play a role in delaying a trip by the former president to New York City today. They are told when the former president needs to travel or would like to travel, and they make it happen. And also, as we know, the preparation has been underway for quite some time now between the Secret Service and the NYPD.
Right.
Plan for the safety and security of not only the venue, but also to plan for protests and other things of that nature.
Chuck Marino, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and sharing these important insights.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Up next, a presidential candidate on trial. What does that look like on the campaign trail? We'll look at the potential political fallout from the Trump indictment. Don't go away.
5th.
Welcome back. Trump is already making some political hay out of the indictment, calling it election interference. Hill Republicans want to haul DA Alvin Bragg before Congress to testify about the case. And today, Bragg sent a letter saying Congress has no warrant for interfering with individual criminal investigations, much less one of a sovereign state, calling the requests improper and dangerous. Joining me now to talk about the politics of all of this, Mika Solner from Punchbowl News. Mika, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
First and foremost, the priority here is security. Are there any updates about security threats or anything in anticipation of Trump being arraigned on Tuesday on the Hill?
Yeah, so we're seeing, a few lawmakers, a few Democratic lawmakers express a lot of concern about what might possibly happen this weekend and beyond. Following Trump's indictment, we saw that United States Capitol Police said that they're going to secure the Capitol a little bit better this weekend to prevent anything from happening or going overboard. Obviously, after January 6th, they want to take major precautions around events like this, major high-profile politically sensitive events like what just happened. And we're seeing some Democratic lawmakers reports that saying that they're allowing their staff to, work from home as well. That's not a major, protocol, a major change, but maybe more encouraged this time. So we're definitely seeing some precautions there.
We've already seen some fundraising off of this indictment. Is that something we're going to see heading into 2024 on the campaign trail for both members of Congress and potentially presidential candidates?
Absolutely. One thing I think both parties are really good at doing is turning anything into a fundraising opportunity. I mean, we're going to see Trump kind of ride this out as him being politically persecuted. That's the kind of the united front that Republicans are having, that he's, a victim of this weaponized government. And we're going to see Democrats, using language like nobody's above the law and that it's a very somber time in America and using the democracy argument. So we're definitely going to be seeing this as a huge campaign issue, especially given that it's not going to be going away anytime soon.
And we saw the District Attorney Bragg didn't mince words in his response to Congress today, telling folks like Jim Jordan, you have no power here. This is a sovereign state's investigation, and this isn't your investigative legislative authority that you're exercising. Butt out, basically. Is there any blowback on the Hill today after that letter came down?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to expect to see, not just these three Republican chairs, Brian Style, Jim Jordan, James Comer, who originally sent the letter, and then a second letter. But I think we're going to see, a growing frustration among the Republican parties, perhaps more aggression in terms of requesting documents and information related to Bragg's investigation. So I think we're going to see a lot of that on that front, especially given, Republicans in the majority for the next 2 years. I don't think it's going to be an easy road for anyone that continues to toe this line here.
We talk about Congress being a court of sorts. They certainly have subpoena power. We've seen Jim Jordan exercise that before. Do you think if he doesn't get what he's looking for here, and it sounds like he's not going to, at least for now, that this is something that he'll take to the courts? What does that look like?
I think anything's possible. Like I said, I think that we're going to see, more aggression. I know he really wants to get answers, and he's been really probing this. And he's been one of the most forceful defendants of former President Trump, and very vocal that he believes that this is a sham, as well as a lot of his other Republican colleagues. But like you said, he has subpoena power, and it's very possible that he may take it to the courts. I'm not sure at the moment, but, I think anything's possible, especially with him as chairing the Judiciary Committee.
Much political hay to continue to be made. Mika Solner with Punchbowl News. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Still ahead tonight, I'm back with some final thoughts on this historic moment. And don't go away.
Man on the moon, if you believe there's nothing up your sleeve and nothing is cool. Moses will walking with the staff of wood.
Thank you all for joining us tonight on this special episode of In the Courts. As we said at the beginning of the show, the threshold for indicting anyone is much lower. It's probable cause to believe that a crime was committed than what a jury would ultimately need to find at trial, which is beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime was committed. So it is a long road, potentially, from that courthouse on Tuesday, where Trump will be arraigned, to any possible conviction. So we just urge caution here and let the criminal process play out. There are neutral decision makers, judges and juries. Have faith in them, and we'll hold your hand along the way. Thanks for joining us tonight in the courts, and we'll see you soon.